Hello, 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 everybody. It's kind of funny. I've dropped my computer, so now you see more of this light, but whatever. Hi, everybody. Welcome to a Be Creative session. I, as always, am working from my shoebox of art supplies. Um, I have a fancy shoebox here that has a little tray that I can lift out that has these compartments in it. Um, and then some of my bigger stuff down here. So this is what I'm going to unpack. I'm also going to share with you some important news and kind of updates with the Be Creative Studios. Gosh, everything's just Be Creative. My name is Rather, as you probably know, unless this is your first time watching me, in which case, hi, welcome. My name is Rather. Rather Be Creative was an art supply store that I opened almost over 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago. In a small town in Western Colorado. Gunnison, Colorado is where I opened up Rather Be Creative, which was an art supply store. And I ran that for 3 years, which means that I also learned all the nitty gritties about all the art supplies on the market in the early 2000s, at least. And when I shut down my shop, I collected all of the things that were in my shop, in addition to putting everything on sale. But I kind of took one of everything. And so for the last almost 20 years, well, for the last about 15 years now, I have been hauling around with me art supplies. I do consider myself an artist, but more than that, I consider myself a creative. And that is because I believe that all of us have a creative juice in us. And the more that we access that, more that we exercise that part of our brain, part of our mind, part of our life, then the more we actually begin to live the life that we want to live. And so I have a long journey with Rather Be Creative and where it's been and how it's shown up in my life. And I really feel like I have a calling to inspire to speak about that journey so that I can inspire other people to embrace their own creativity. Because individuality is a real thing, and that we are all different. And that's beautiful. And it's also complicated when we outsource good ideas, outsource the right idea. Finding the right idea through somebody else, and we don't use our own creative instincts. So up until today, this has been a membership, and it's been a membership that I offered to the handful of people that went through the Shoebox Studio with me. So the Shoebox Studio was all of these supplies, give or take. I've kind of replaced some things as we've gone along. It was taught back in July for the first time, back in July of 2022, June and July, end of June and into July. And that was a place where we learned how to use basically what I consider to be a full artist's studio. But it's everything that you could ever want or need to create pretty much anything. And we learned how to do that in the Shoebox Studio. So if you're interested in that, you can go get the Shoebox Studio. It does include your supplies, your first round of supplies. And then now I am actually going to shift this membership into a free YouTube channel. So we are going to show up weekly on YouTube, and we're going to just keep creating just like we always have been. Only I'm not going to send you a reminder email or let you know that it's uploaded. It's just going to happen every week. If you want to sign up for my notifications and stuff like that, we'll get into that part later. You'll be hearing from me. It's not that you're not going to hear from me. But I'm going to start doing this on YouTube and making it accessible to the whole world for free, because it feels great to be giving it to you for free, and to try and turn it into a membership is just not where it is in my life right now. And it doesn't seem like I necessarily have enough people on the same page with what I'm thinking and what I'm believing. And so there's really no need to try and monetize this action right now. This is just what I want to do for myself. And, you know, I want to inspire others to do the same thing. So I don't need to charge them to do it. So this is just going to be a free YouTube channel from now on. Rather Be Creative. We're going to be creative through the Shoebox Studio. So if you need the supplies, you want me to just send you the supplies, let me know, sign up for the Shoebox, and then you get all the videos. You know, you guys know this, but if anyone's watching this for the first time, you can go sign up for the Shoebox Studio. You get all of these supplies. Plus, it's like 12 hours of instructional video of how to use and how to play with all of this stuff. So what I just did is I just dug in the bottom and I pulled out a couple pieces of watercolor paper and my mixed media sketchbook. And then I also have this box here that has a couple of paint pens, some permanent markers, some colored pencils. I have an X-Acto knife, some random sticks, some popsicle sticks and stuff that I picked up along the way. Texture making, any kind of pencil, marker, that kind of stuff in it. And then in the top of my kit, which I'll show you what I've got here, and then I'm going to push it over there. I have oil pastels and chalk pastels. I have watercolor. I actually carry 3 different watercolor palettes with me. This is my favorite one. This is the one that comes in the Shoebox Studio. I have used this one so much, and then I've also let my 3-year-old use it. So I'll show you as soon as I open it. It's a little bit muddy. I haven't cleaned it up in a while. It could just use a nice little spray and a wipe off with a paper towel. I haven't gotten around to it. That's okay. This is the one that I enjoy using. She does also get to use this one too. So oftentimes it's a bit messy. Looks pretty good right now. I have a couple more colors in here than I have available in this one. And then this is something I've just picked up at like a Tuesday morning or Home Goods or something. It's actually 3 different palettes in one. And the reason that I carry so many watercolor palettes in my shoebox is because I'm frequently working with other people. So I like to have, you know, stuff to kind of spread around a table. 2, 3 people can work off of the same watercolor palette, no problem. Be respectful of each other and the way that you're mixing paints. So I'm just going to pull out that one to use today. I pretty much always get my watercolor palette out. Also in here, I'm seeing a pencil. These brushes and palette knives come in the Shoebox Studio. This is some vine charcoal and some lead. This is our graphite. It's a graphite stick, so it's like a pencil. And then this is actually the black out of my chalk pastels, because that is just a fine charcoal there. So 2 different kinds of charcoal. Oh, look at this. I actually have a 4th watercolor palette in here. This is my extra super fancy one. These are some homespun watercolors. So just the primaries and black and white. I've clearly not really played with this one that much. It's intimidating because it's so special. So I haven't really played with it. I'll get there. I carry it around with me. I have some acrylic paints. These are tempera paint sticks. These are not included in the Shoebox Studio, although I do believe that I'm going to have a Shoebox Kids coming out soon, and that will probably be in that. These are just fun. I've added them because I have kids playing in my box often. But these are just a fun textural thing to add to my shoebox. I've got some glue sticks, my erasers, and some acrylic ink. So that's the kind of stuff that's in the Shoebox Studio, or the shoebox itself. I'm gonna set that to the side, and then I have I do carry with me again 2 sets of brushes. You really only need one unless you have a lot of people painting with you frequently, which again I do. So that's why I have 2 sets of those. These are wrapped up in an absorbent cloth. do take care to find yourself an absorbent cloth. There's a lot of cloths out there that are like cleaning cloths, the micro fiber stuff that's not actually designed to absorb. Also, a lot of the times we put dryer sheets in so many of our towels that they lose their ability to absorb water. So if at all you can manage to wash your absorbent materials, your cloths that you're using to pick up water in your studio or even in your kitchen and stuff, wash them without dryer sheets, and so they will absorb better. These are old diapers. They're super absorbent, and they work great. That's what I usually wrap up my brushes in so they don't get frayed or bumped into while they're in there. And then these are the 4 brushes that are included in the Shoebox Studio. We have a 1-inch flat, a number 10 filbert, a number 6 round, and a this is a 14, number 14 round. This is the brush that came in the watercolor palette. So, excuse me. I woke up with a little bit of a frog in my throat, so tending to that as best I can. So typically on these sessions, I am getting out my little box of like quick grab pencils and such. I'm getting out my watercolors. I do usually have a small spray bottle in here. I don't know where my small one is, but I do have my big one right here. I'm usually getting out my brushes and spraying my watercolor palette to begin with, and choosing what paper to work with. During these Be Creative sessions, it's all about playing. So I am always pulling out at least 2 pieces of paper. And I work with, we've learned in the past, right, guys, to work with small-ish pieces of paper, to not go with the super big pieces. Oh, this is also in my kit. This is what I call bobbly bits and textures. So this is some random pieces of packaging and such that I have kind of collected. Bubble wrap, some streamers, cotton balls. This stuff can be used to drag through paint and stuff like that. So I just have a little kit of this. I think down in here maybe is some sequins and some stuff. I always encourage you to, if it's a birthday party and you can grab a couple fun looking sequins, glitter pieces of packaging, stuff like that. That's always really fun to just kind of have as an extra layer. And that is what we do a lot of here, is we layer. So I also have over here my little stack of things that we've done for the last couple of weeks. Because we're showing up weekly, this is what I consider a finished product. I'm waiting to find the perfect frame to stick this in. But this is 3 different sessions of going into this painting. And only in the very last session did it kind of begin to formulate into a landscape even. So these things kind of build upon themselves, and that's also a beauty of working in multiples. So this is what I did last week, these 3 right here. I've been experimenting with underpainting and using the bright colors, painting the bright colors first, and every bit of the paper, aside from like the next layer, getting the color that's going on there. So I started with a really bright yellow, which is the inside layer of this flower, and then I did a darker yellow on top of everything else. And so these leaves both got that dark, this whole background got that yellow also. And I built up, I did all 3 of them differently. Or that same method. So this was a really light wash I put down from the very beginning, and then I came in with a very light green. This one was a little bit confusing because I had to figure out how to make like the negative space, and it kind of boggled my mind last week. And I kind of like started this one in that fashion, and then I didn't do it, and then I kind of tried to come back to it. So this one might not have the exact same effect, but these are just kind of little doodles. This was warming up, practicing my brush strokes, feeling the paper out. These are some other ones that were started a couple of weeks ago, a couple of months ago even. I can always come back in here and put in more layers of texture. This is really fun to come in with your paint marker or a Sharpie. These paint markers or even a Sharpie, and just make textural like type dots, patterns, lots of different patterns. You can play with patterns on top of these fun designs just putting some color down, depending on how you're feeling. A lot of the times we'll just do like 10 pages of this and just smearing paint around. That's super fun. Kids like this. And then the next time you're like, I'm feeling a little bit more doodly. I'm feeling a little bit more detail oriented. So I might start in on some of these older pieces like this. And that might be the kind of mood that I'm in, is just making marks. The beautiful thing about me being virtually with you and even at a delayed state is that really what we're doing is we're just playing. Yours is never going to look just like mine. It's like impossible because we're not even next to each other. I sit here with my girls sometimes and we play follow the leader. And so one person is in control of this whole thing and we're all three trying to mimic what she does. And they're all three different every single time, even when we're right here physically next to each other and working from the exact same palette. So there is magic in what we're doing. This one started kind of like these did. It did. It started at the exact same time as these did. And then it went through the same production layers as this one. So you can see they all go in different ways. Right now, the top layer of both of those is a chalk pastel. So I'm not rubbing my fingers over this because it would come up on my fingers. It's chalk. And so you got to kind of be careful and mindful about how you're keeping things. This one you can see I came in with gold, just on top of I was just dribbling color around on wet paper and seeing what happened, which is probably we're going to start kind of in this zone today, but then I do actually have some ideas. This was just a scribbling around, scraping stuff around. You can see some texture in there, scraping probably my fingernails through that. This again, this is when we learned with the big paper that the big paper takes a long time. You have a lot of paper to move paint over. And so it's hard to accomplish two things. I try to do two big pieces of paper one day, and this is the third session of working on these two papers. So, or this is 3 sessions of working on these two papers. So you can see you get a lot of fun stuff out of this. Having a board around, this is just the back of a frame that's not being used. So it's 11 by 14 and 12 by 16. And I can tape things down. Oftentimes when you work with water, things are going to curl up. So those of you that have watched me before are like, why are we still talking about this? And we're still talking about all this stuff and I'm reviewing all this stuff because I feel like I'm starting a new chapter with putting this on YouTube live. So thanks for being with me on that journey and of the trial of the membership. And I'm going to go ahead and shift into just presenting this to the whole world. And so this is where we begin again. Thank you. Thank you for being here. So with that in mind, I am just going to begin afresh. I said that I pulled out a couple of pieces of watercolor paper. I am going to fold those in half and give a quick tear so that I have 2 pieces, and I might even cut those in half too. So watercolor paper is a little bit stiffer if you've ever worked with it before. It's a little bit thicker, a little bit stiffer. It's also going to have a texture to it. I always have water around. I have at least 2 dishes of water, fairly big dishes of water. One of them is going to be dirty water. I use like yogurt containers. One of them is going to be dirty water, and one of them is going to end up, you're going to try and keep it as clean as you can because you want to have clean water. You pick up whichever brush, it doesn't matter. I have a tendency to go towards these filberts because they're just kind of in between a flat and a round. We're just going to wet the top of that piece of paper. This is the way to quick tear your pieces of paper in case you're working with this on your own and not through the Shoebox Studio. I do explain all of this. There. You just wet both sides of it. If you really want to get a super straight edge, you can start using like something like this and go across it like that. Your fingers, I don't know if you can see this, but I can see that my fingers were a little bit dirty with something, and so I've got a little bit of, schmudge there. I don't care. I'm here to play. That kind of stuff is happy little accidents as far as I'm concerned. Let's see. Am I feeling big and gluttonous, or am I feeling small and micro? I'm gonna feel big. Let's feel big. So I'm just gonna freshen up, relax, loosen up a little bit. I'm gonna use my small brush and mix up some colors. I'm gonna give my colors, so we give our watercolors just a light spray, and then they should be nice and ready to dip into. I'm gonna wet my brush. I do intentionally use my small brush when I first go into my watercolors because I don't want to waste the pigment. If I use my big brush, I'm going to mix and use lots of extra pigment because this is going to pick up a lot more than that. So if I don't need to pick up this much, I'm not going to. You ever seen a 3-year-old dip the whole brush into the pot of paint only to make one little schmack and then rinse the brush off because it's more fun to dip and rinse than it is to actually paint sometimes. the conservative mind, the conservationist mind in my mind was, don't waste the paint like that. That's why we get inexpensive stuff and we just learn to use it and play with it. Okay. So I am going to trust that those are nice and open, and I'm just going to make a couple of circles, or I don't have to make them circles. I can make them whatever shape I want. I can leave some dry spots in the middle of them. I can just make some movie little, like, you'll be able to see your water better than you can see mine. But I'm just making some wetness on my paper. Okay. And just for play's sake, I'm going to make sure those spots are really wet. So if your water's already dirty, you might want to go ahead and change it before you do this project, so that you have some clean water. But also, if it was a little bit clean, no big deal too, because now you can probably see your spots. I think I got some fun little spots here wet. And so now what I'm going to do is I'm going to pick a color. You can definitely tell that my paper's feeling wet because it's starting to buckle a little bit. And just for shits and giggles here, I'm going to do a little flicking to try and see if I can land in, see how that's moving. Land in some of these puddles so that I can begin to see my outlines a little bit better. Things that I drew. And you'll notice if you pick up your paper that everything's going to start flowing. All right. One color is kind of boring. Rinsing. Actually, I know that this purple is rather boring too, but that's okay. I'm gonna do the same thing. But now that I can kind of see my spots, there we go. So I'm just lightly flicking my brush and putting some paint and exploring where the water goes. I really like it when I come out, let's see if I can find another spot here. So I'm kind of following my water's edge here, and then I kind of lost it. Can you see? And there's dryness right there in the middle. And just seeing how the two colors mix. Bring in a brighter, even brighter pink. Are you noticing that same thing when you kind of, it's like the difference of going straight into the wet versus finding the edge and actually being on the dry. And so this is just a chance to play with it and to see what the colors do with each other, to see how the paper is going to react, to see what colors are coming to you, if you like certain effects. So I love the way that the paper forces like a hard edge. You see this really hard edge right along there? I love seeing those. And if you play the paper right, you play your water right, patiently. See, there's not so hard of an edge right here, right? So I'm actually going to pull up some of this kind of ultramarine blue again and see if I can't get that edge to harden just a little bit or a lot of it. And if I'm like, hey, that kind of wasn't necessarily, see it going into that one too. This around before I rinse that brush. See, this is already dried there. Not much water. So I've also found that when I create is when my mind really starts to explore new ideas and new thoughts and think about the world that we live in, this crazy, awesome planet Earth. And as I know because we're all living it, um, it's really crazy out there. It's crazy out there. Or is that just me? I know it's not just me. Um, we're all dealing with our own things in our own way. For me, this time of year really brings up a lot of that, like what would I prefer to be doing thoughts. And every year I promise myself I'll listen more to what those things are, and uh, being here and doing this, and this is something that brings me joy. And ultimately, when it comes down to it, it's obviously way more involved than just what brings you joy, but so much of it really is just doing more of what brings you joy, right? A good friend, um, fellow empress, um, which is something else I'll probably talk more about, but I'm in a lovely membership, and we call each other empresses. Um, but her whole thing is joy. Do what brings you joy. And it's like, it's so simple, but there's so much truth in it. And there's so much like, I mean, I can remember one of the first concerts I saw in college, with some friends, and I still to this day consider their music to be so just like uplifting and inspiring. And I remember the first concert that I saw of theirs and coming back to my family, and who my parents appreciate a good concert, but coming home and being like, oh, like listen to this. If you don't feel the joy in this music, then there's just something wrong with you. Of course, 20 years later, I can understand how some people don't like that, but I also wonder how frequently they access joy, and how and what their idea of joy is, and if they provide that for themselves, or if they even know what that looks like, you know. I don't think I know any of those people, but just can't see the joy in some of that music. But all right, so I'm starting to kind of dry up. I don't see very much water moving around anymore. I kind of want to go into some of these, but there's just not enough water for anything to be solidified. And so one of the things that I do normally have in my kit, but I don't know where it is, but I do know where my studio stuff is a salt shaker. Normally I have a salt shaker in here. That's okay, I happen to be in my studio. And I am just going to, while this last little bit of water is still on my paper, I'm going to sprinkle a little bit of salt on the really wet spots. Okay, so wherever it's wet, I'm trying to sprinkle a little salt, and I'm just going to set this aside. So this was just plain. Next, oh, shake my arms out, shake my hands out. So since I'm sending this into the bigger world, I think I might be talking about bigger things, not just art and doodling. Hopefully you are enjoying your process and you are doodling and putting paint on paper and not waiting for me to do my next move. Because actually I did want to show you guys one thing, which is a personal project that I'm working on. Because I do consider myself an artist. I do sell my art around our community and online, and it is the holidays. So I'm getting prepared for all of that process that's happening right now. And I had a couple of ideas of things that I just want to be working on, but I'm really enjoying just loosening up with you right now. So we're going to keep doing this. But I do have a prep thing that I'd like to show you guys before we're done today, because it's like kind of a head prep thing that I can show you, and a really awesome way to get some stuff potentially for the holidays or for gift giving and stuff like that to make yourself. So but next I want to get out my oil pastels, and I am just going to get out the white. Yep, the white. Come on. And you'll notice that a lot of my oil pastels are broken in half. Not all of them yet, but I actually tend to, it's probably more evident in my chalk pastels. This idea is that I can use the small piece, it fits in my hand a lot better, and I'm preserving a good section of this. Also helps with working with multiple people into the same palette and stuff like that. So a lot of these tend to be broken. They're not broken, like need to be fixed, broken. They're just broken so that they're more easily usable and accessible for more people. So don't worry when things break. I'm gonna get out my white. Yeah, we're going for it. I'm feeling it. I'm feeling a little mix around feeling, and I just put my finger in my watercolor there. And because I'm feeling so much of that, I'm going to pull out a sheet of my mixed media paper as well. And where I'm just going to loosen up a little bit with Drawing paper is fine. If all you have is drawing paper, play with drawing paper. That's perfect. If you have the ability to get a little bit of a thicker paper, mixed media, it's going to be your next step up. It's just a little bit thicker of a paper. It's designed to actually hold some liquid. It's going to feel better with markers and watercolors for sure. It's also going to withstand more layers. So it's not as thick as watercolor paper, but also not as flimsy as drawing paper. I'm going to put these two right next to each other. And I'm going to use my white. So you're not going to be able to see me drawing anything here. And you know what? I will use off-white so that you can see it. That's why this one is even broken. I will use the tan so that you can see what I'm doing. And I would suggest you use the white because it's just kind of more fun that way. But so you can see, yeah, maybe I'll do white on the watercolor and we'll practice right here. Okay, and I'm just going to, the action that my hand makes is this while I'm moving. So a little bit of a rolling of your fingers over back and forth while you're doing your, and I try and keep it one continuous line. And come back to where I stopped. Except I want some more going on over here. So it's not going to come back to where I stopped. Good. All right. I didn't go across this part. Okay. So now you can kind of see the gist of what I was trying to do here, and I'm going to do it with white here. Okay. That one I did not connect in the end. Oh, there you go. See how I did that? Maybe I'll go ahead and connect it. It's a circle. Okay, so you can kind of see what I did there. And now with my trusty watercolors, let's see. We'll do them two different ways. One thing to note, here's one thing to note. My brush is getting wiggly. At the end of today's session, this happens. It happens frequently, especially inexpensive brushes. But also if you leave your brush in the water for a little bit. This is called the ferrule. And it just loosens up, but it's just put in there by glue. So whatever glue you have around, super glue would be better than like Elmer's. At the end of your drawing session, your painting session, once this is cleaned and dried, give yourself just a little dollop, pull it out a little bit and put a little glue in there and then stick it in, give it a little spin if you can, and don't use it for a day. And hopefully you'll save your brush. Okay. Meanwhile, you can just use it and wait for it to fall out. I'm going to fully wet this piece and I'm not going to wet this one. I'm going to do individual wettings of this one because the paper is thinner. But I'm going to go ahead and wet this whole thing. Now, one thing to notice, I don't know about you, but I can already see some little leaflets of my oil pastel on the paper. It's totally fine, but just know that those are going to get picked up by this brush. So just know that. All right. So you might see it, you might end up, because oil and water don't mix, right? So you might see these little oil pieces floating in your water over here. You might notice some oil pieces, some oil residue in your watercolors. You might take care to like rinse your brush a whole lot more so that you're not adding a lot of that into there. Up to you, just kind of some things to notice. My dirty water hasn't actually gotten that dirty, so I'm just going to keep using it. If yours is super dirty, go to the clean water. And I'm just gonna wet this whole piece of paper. And you'll notice that it's not, that the oil is resisting, right? And so you can see that there's parts of the paper that are going to take the water, and there's parts of the paper that are not going to take the water now that you have put oil pastel on them. You can also see your paper buckling if you're like me and you didn't tape it down. If you taped it down, good on you. If you didn't, put up with it. Try and remember it next time. Here's what I was talking about with this, see? So I'm gonna take care to, now that I see that, can you see all that oil residue? I'm gonna wipe it in my cloth here to try and get a lot of it out. It's also floating around in the top of my water. It's okay, it's not gonna hurt anything. It's just something to notice. And long term, I mean, to say it's not gonna hurt anything is kind of, it's not entirely true because oil and water don't mix. And that's just it. So I have tried to like kind of buckle this back in so that I have a little bit more control and I keep more paint on the paper as I do this next step. Which I'm gonna just go with the rainbow here. And I'm gonna try and touch certain sides. When I said that about the colors mixing, I do mean it. You don't want to like muddy your entire palette. If you're kind of in the same zone, like you're just trying to kind of come up with a fresh red in this instance, I did go between, I kind of have three reds on my, one of them's a little bit of a brown, and I have three of them, and I didn't really rinse my brush in between those. And that's totally fine to do, okay? And I'm just gonna kind of work down the rainbow. So again, I kind of have three oranges here. So I'm just gonna kind of create my own little orange. And I'm not too worried about it being, perfect or um, duplicable, but I want a little bit of variation in there. Okay. And that one seems kind of bright. So I would take my trusty paper towel and just boop, pull a little bit of it out of there. And come back in with just a little bit. And just watercolor brushes are also, they're meant to pick up paint so that you can then disperse it. So if you have too much water in a spot on your paper, you can actually pick it up with your brush. Cool, huh? Try and pick up a little bit more on that one, even though I have a little bit of orange in there. So dry brush, picking it up. Okay. Yellows, again, I have three yellows on my palette. Kind of have to move it around so that I can actually see my shapes that I've created. And if you begin to run out of wet spaces, you can always re-wet, or you can play around with what does the dry brush do, or the dry pigment do. You might find a puddle over here on one side. Oops, I went on the wrong side. And see how I went outside of there? Okay, and then we're gonna make that other one blue. But so anyway, like I was saying, because I'm turning this into a place where it's not private access, I feel like I'm gonna be sharing a lot more while I talk. So um, feel free to, don't mute me. Because I'm not teaching you anything if you mute me, but please feel free to take everything and anything I say with a grain of salt. I am not a preacher, nor do I have any desires to be a preacher. But I do have things to share, and I think that the world is calling me to share my voice. And when I'm creative is when my voice feels the strongest. So, and when I am feeling the most joyful is when I'm creating. And so my life has brought me to the point where I can honor that and recognize that and move from that place of of divine creativity, if you will, just really embracing this calling that my body really resonates with. And when I'm being creative is when my voice feels the strongest. So here we are. Here we are. Here we are. Thank you for being here with me. Thank you for being on this journey with me. So I'm losing a little bit of water in some places, but I'm actually not. In others, I have a couple of big puddles here. Try and make a little turquoise. My oldest could tell me exactly how to make the perfect turquoise. See how much was in there? So how much water was in there? So I'm going to dry off my brush and just pick some of that up. Isn't that amazing how that happens? Again, rinse, dry off my brush. You see, this is a big puddle in there. I'm just gonna pick it up. Pretty amazing, really. Now, in contrast, I'm letting that blue come down here. I could have picked it up as well, but I liked the pigment that was there, and so I didn't want to, you know, take it out. I wanted to keep that vibrancy, and so I'm encouraging it to settle in different places by tilting my paper. When you tilt your paper and do that kind of stuff, it's important to kind of watch the rest of your paper too, because you have a good chance of, you know, something tilting over on another piece of your paper that you didn't expect it to be. Okay, go for a little bit of a brown in here. So I'm gonna stop after this piece right here, just so that I can show you this other thing. But please, if you're enjoying this, I hope you continue on. I hope you continue on exploring this concept and what you can do. It's fun to even draw, you know, if you've got the hang of drawing something you love, and using this to fill in that space. You know, you could draw the shape of a dog or a beach ball or something, and make it a colorful dog or beach ball. There's lots you can do with this method of just letting the color and the pigment spread. Okay, so like I said, I'm gonna go ahead and let this sit as is. Where's my salt? There's a couple perfectly primed places for salt. You still have some good wet spots. Salt does some really cool stuff. Once it's dry, you can dust it off and you'll really be able to see what salt does to your painting. Watercolor. I have found that for the most part, it really only works with watercolor. Okay. Now, once this dries, I can come back with more water into these spots that haven't been painted. Okay. So I can always come back to this one. And I wouldn't do the whole paper like I did the first time. I would just do each individual spot. Okay. Now this one was a little too wet for the salt. So we'll just have to lay it flat and see what happens. Okay. So the next project that I want to show you, please continue on that because I'm not going to be using my supplies, but I really wanted to show you this concept. I have picked up many, but I have a little stack of 10 of these things. They are little 5x7 wooden framed little pieces of wood here. They were in the sale discount bin. This was originally $6 and it was marked down to $2. So what's that, like 60% off? So this is now a $2 canvas, if you will. Because there is just this simple design on it, I can tape it off and just paint straight onto it if I want to. I prefer to go ahead and give a full layer of gesso. There is gesso in your shoebox kit. So if you have that available, go ahead and pull it out. If you want to do this alongside with me, if you can do this alongside with me, I might make note in these show notes here to let you know that if you have that, bring it and have it available. And I need to find my tape, although I'll say one of it too. So blue or green painter's tape is what I prefer to use. And I'm just going to pull as close as I can get. And now here's the part that I think, go ahead, take my price tag off of the front of it. This is another reason why putting a layer of gesso down before you actually begin your painting might be helpful. But if you go into your local craft store or into a thrift store, or you might also find these things I mean, you'll be surprised at where you find these things. Oftentimes they're in the discount bin. But I consider anything under, I mean, as a business, I consider anything under $10 to be a great deal as far as a canvas to paint on. A pack of canvases that are 5x7, you know, a pack of like 6 or 8 of them is probably going to cost you about $10 of this 5x7 size. And then to me, the really critical part is that beautiful if you want to work in that size and create in that size, but the canvas alone is oftentimes not feeling very finished. And so if you really want to finish something, typically you want to frame it. Now at the canvas, you can paint the edge all one color, or you can make your painting go all the way around it, but you're still going to want to put something back here. See, this has like the little clip. I'm keeping that on there just because it's helping it not scratch something else, but it's got that little saw clip right there, or you would want to run wire between it. This is what I really like about getting these things when they're discounted like this, is that it's framed, it's ready to go. And typically you can buy a couple of them at a time. So it's kind of like a little collection that you can buy at the same time. And when I tape this off, I want to be mindful and to really get that tape way down under there and create a seal. It's even a good time to get your X-Acto knife out or some sort of a really thin kind of razor's edge and really get that tape all the way in under there to seal it off. Okay, and this tape job that you're going to do now, and then hopefully run a new layer of gesso on there, is going to stay until you're done with your painting, because you don't want to gesso it and then go paint it and then take that tape off and then paint it and then accidentally paint onto your frame. So you're really just protecting your frame. You're acting like your frame basically isn't there for a little bit while you paint on your canvas. And then, so I'm going to spend a little time, and if you're interested in painting something for people for Christmas, or you know, you run across a bunch of these and you really love the shape and you've got this idea, and you pick them up, what I'm going to do, instead of just taping this one off and then gessoing this one and then painting this one, is that I have a little stack of 10 of them over here. And so I'm going to tape off all 10 of those. And then I'm going to gesso all 10 of them. And then I'm going to let them dry. And then I'm going to gesso them again, because I like 2 layers of gesso. And then I'm going to decide what's going to be painted on all of them. So, you know, that's how I work in my own production kind of way. Oh, cool. This stuff is drying now. You can see what that salt does. Oh, I just love it. It reminds me of snowflakes. It's not drying. It reminds me of crystallization, I should say. It's not dry enough for me to wipe it off, but it is drying on there. And same over here. See, still not quite dry enough to flick off. Oh, I just love it though. Okay. So if you are on the lookout for this type of stuff, and all it takes is some painter's tape and some gesso, which you have gesso in your shoebox if you're working from your shoebox. You can also tint your gesso. I like to work on a dark surface. So I tint my gesso to kind of a dark gray. And remember that gray is technically complementary colors mixed, or some variation of. Kind of equal parts of all 3 of the primary colors makes a really beautiful gray. And then you can add more or less of that. So if you don't have black, it's okay. You can just add equal parts, maybe not equal parts, of all of your colors to make a nice gray into that gesso. Mix a whole bunch of it up, and then you can gesso everything the same background. And then you have a bunch of nice little dry canvases that once you're done painting them, they're ready to hang. You don't have to worry about how you're going to frame them, how you're going to finish them. It's just like whip that tape off and they are done. So that feels good to me. I hope it feels good to you. Playing right now felt great to me. Thank you for playing with me. If I wasn't going to dive into taping all 10 of these off right now, I would be continuing on with this. So if you're feeling it, I hope you'll continue on. If you're ready to rush off to Hobby Lobby and see how many of these you can get, carry on. And if you're curious about what I keep saying about this shoebox studio, you can head to Rather Be Creative, where you will find it. And you can purchase that shoebox studio. It's over $150 of art supplies shipped straight to you. It's all of the art supplies that we use as we go through these weekly creative sessions here on YouTube. So thanks for being here. I appreciate it. Thanks for being here on this planet right now. I hope that being creative regularly like this gives you the courage and the inspiration to do all of the things that you're meant to do, that bring you joy and that help us collectively live the life we want to live, right? Rather be living the life we'd rather be living. So thanks for being here. We will see you next week.